today's class is the Persian and Mede captivity and an African diaspora in the Indian Ocean. Once again, today's class is the Persian and Mede captivity and an African diaspora in the Indian Ocean. So what we're going on with this captivity, like I said, we're going to go to ancient times during our fathers, whether it be Daniel, whether it be Haggai, Zerubbabel, during the Persian captivity. And what you're going to realize is there's no difference between then and now. And not only that, but we're going to go through history, go through the times leading all the way up to today in the African diaspora in the Indian Ocean. We have people scattered throughout all the four corners of the earth. Not only are people scattered in America, North America, Central America, South America, or the islands of the sea, the Caribbean islands, or Africa. We read scriptures such as Isaiah chapter 11, verse 11, talking about the diaspora and the coast of Africa, but we haven't touched the diaspora in the Indian Ocean, which you're going to realize the Indian Ocean has ties with the sub-Saharan slave trade. That's the missing link that we haven't gone into too much. And history really doesn't touch the African diaspora in the Indian Ocean. Yes, we have people in India and all throughout the Asian subcontinent. So today we're going to go through that history. We're going to take a journey. So this series is going to be, it's going to be quite a few classes. I'll say maybe 3 to 4, 5 classes maybe. Let's see if time persists. All right, so make sure you have your pens and papers. Make sure you take good notes. All right, it's going to be recorded for your information later on. All right, we're going to start with Genesis chapter 10, verse 22. Genesis chapter 10, verse 22. We're going to start with Elam, because it says the Indian Ocean, the Persian and Mede captivity in the Indian Ocean. Let's go back to the beginning, the book of Genesis. Genesis means the beginning. Genesis chapter 10, verse 22.
This is the book of Genesis, chapter 10, verse 22. The children of Shem, Elam.
So it says the children of Shem. Noah had 3 sons. You have Shem, Ham, and Japheth. I'll say it again. Noah had three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And from those 3 sons persist all the nations and races, ethnicities on this earth today. So the only difference is, and the confusion behind it is, throughout time and history, the names have been changed by the Greeks, the Romans, as well as the Americans, the French, the Dutch. They have all altered and changed our names so that we cannot locate our biblical nationalities. That's why when we read the Bible, people confuse it as a mythological book or made a book because of the names, not knowing that we all descend from one of these fathers. So it says, and the children of Shem, read.
Elam.
Elam. Elam was a child of Shem. Now Elam, which we're going to find out, is the father of the Persian and the Medes. Well, not the Medes, the father of the Persians, the Iranians, and so forth. All right, Elam, read.
And Ashar, and Arphaxad, and Lud, and Aram, and the children of Aram, Uz.
So that's what we want to. So we want to focus on the children of Shem, Elam. So Elam descended from Shem. He was Semitic. Elam is Semitic. Now let's go to Genesis chapter 14, verse 1. So you ask yourself, what happened to the fathers in the Bible? Did they disappear? Genesis chapter 14, verse 1.
Genesis chapter 14, verse 1. And it came to pass in the days of Amraphel, king of Shinar, Ariel, king of Eleazar, Jehozahleo, Lamar, king of Elam.
So Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, read.
And Tidal, king of nations.
So back then, you had world ruling superpowers during the time of Genesis, during the time of Abraham, during the time of Elam. So you had during the time of Shem. These were world dominated superpowers. You had different kingdoms, just like today. You have America as a superpower. You have the East Indians as a superpower. You have the Chinese as a superpower. So the way it is today is the same way it was back then. There's no difference. Now jump to verse 9.
Verse 9. With Chedorlaomer, the king of Elam, and with Tidal, the king of nations, and Amramphel, king of Shinar, and Arioch, king of Eleazar. 4 kings with 5.
Four superpowers. 4 ruling kingdoms were 5. So I just want to show you the history, or like I said, the origins of Elam. They're in the Bible and it's still around today. Now, can we go to Josephus? Book 1. 1.6.4. Let's go to the book of Josephus. Okay.
Shem, the 3rd son of Noah, had 5 sons who inhabited the lands that began at Euphrates and reached to the Indian Ocean.
So Shem historically was a real person. That's why you have people that call themselves Shemitic or Semitic. Think of that, so-called Jewish people call themselves Shemites or Semites. They call themselves Semitic, but they call everybody that speaks against them anti-Semitic, which is impossible because Elam descended from Shem. Caucasians descend from Shem. You have Arabs descend from Shem. Chinese descend from Shem. Blacks, Native American Indians, and so-called Hispanics descend from Shem. Iranians descend from Shem. So it's impossible to be anti-yourself. So we were all Shemitic or Semitic people. The issue is that people don't have the correct education, the proper education. It wasn't taught to them in the colleges, the universities, as well as the churches. The religious institution is not an educational institution to properly educate them about the Bible. All right? So Elam, let's read that part again.
Shem, the 3rd son of Noah, had 5 sons who inhabited the land that began at Euphrates and reached to the Indian Ocean.
And reached to the Indian Ocean. Read.
For Elam left behind him the Elamites.
Elam became a nation. Not everybody became a nation, but Elam left behind him the Elamites. Read.
The ancestors of the Persians.
The ancestors of the Persians. So Elam left behind them the Elamites. The ancestors of the Persians. So everybody, there's an origin. You have the table of nations. Everybody has their origin that they could date back to a biblical forefather. So throughout history, the names have changed. So the fathers, Elam is still here. The issue is, the only thing that changed is the names changed because of the reclassification and retitling of the nations. So Elam became the Persians. All right, let's get Missionary Herald. Missionary Herald.
There are some reasons to believe that the aboriginal inhabitants of India were of the family of Shem.
So there are some reasons to believe that the aboriginal inhabitants of India were of the family of Shem. Read.
And that they came into India by 2 routes. One at the northwest across the Indus, and the other by...
So the Indus, across the Indus region valley, or the Indus Valley civilization. You're going to read that quite often. So you have the Indus Valley civilization. So it's the Indus Valley. Read that part again. And that they came.
And that they came into India by 2 routes. One at the northwest across the Indus, and the other by sea into southwestern India.
All right, that's it. So now, let's get the American Antiquarian and Oriental Journal, volume 6, page 356.
The origin of the Indian alphabet. We have already referred in this journal to some of the discussions regarding the origin of that one of the old Indian alphabets, which was the mother of most of the systems of writing which have since been current in India. A very useful summary of the different views that have prevailed, with brief criticism of each, is furnished by Mr. Custer in the Journal of the Royal Asiatic Society for July. Of the 2 alphabets whose ancient forms have been preserved for us in inscriptions, the northern one is admittedly of Semitic origin.
You said the northern one is originally of Semitic admittedly of Semitic origin. Read.
It is regard to the South Indian letters that scholars are not in accord.
So, what we want to touch is not only, so it's many documented historical facts, information showing that the people of India, whether it be by their letters, their language, is original, admittedly, of Semitic language. Showing you that the people that live in Indus region, valley region, or lived in India's subcontinent were of Semitic descent. Semitic descent, which descended from Elamites, or the Persians. Now, let's go to the Indus Valley Civilization, Wikipedia. So we're building a case.
The Indus Valley Civilization, IVC, was a Bronze Age civilization in northwestern regions of South Asia, lasting from 3300 BCE to 1300 BCE, and in its mature form from 2600 BCE to 1900 BCE. Together with ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia, it was one of three early civilizations of the Near East and South Asia, and of the three, the most widespread. Its site spanning an area stretching from northeast Afghanistan.
So the location of the Indus Valley Civilization spread northeast of Afghanistan. Read.
Through much of Pakistan.
Through much of Pakistan, inhabited all that region. So you have the inhabitants of Pakistan fit in with the Indus Valley Civilization or region. Read.
And into the western and northwestern India.
And all those people, all those like I said, all those ethnic groups, all those inhabitants of that region, the Indus Valley Civilization, what you're gonna find out has ties to the same forefather. Read.
It flourished in the basins of the Indus River, which flows through the length of Pakistan and along a system of
all right, so that's what I want. So not everybody that you see in the Middle East or Asia is Arabs. So it says the Indus Valley Civilization, which India or Elam inhabited, consisted of the region of Afghanistan, Pakistan, and the Indian subcontinent, which were the descendants of Shem, Semitic. All right. Now let's go to the Middle Edomite period. So these people are all descendants of Elam, or the Elamites, or what you would see today as the Persians. Just different names were given to them through process of time. They were altered and changed, and that's why a lot of people can't locate they can't locate the origin of their ancestors. And if we said, what's your nationality according to the Bible? Nobody really knows because of the confusion that was bred upon the earth. All right. Read.
Middle Elamite period, 1500 through 1100 BC. Anshan and Susa.
Anshan and Susa.
The Middle Elamite period began with the rise of Anshanite dynasties around 1500 BC. Their rule was characterized by an Elamization of Susa. The kings took the title King of Ashan and Susa.
So it says the Middle Edomite period with the rise of the Ashanite dynasties around 1500 BC. Their rule was characterized by an Edomization of Susa. I want you to keep that name in mind. So their rule was characterized by the Edomization of Susa. Read.
While the first of these dynasties, the Kiduids, continued to use the Akkadian language frequently in their inscriptions. The succeeding.
I can't pronounce it either. Just read on.
And the Shutakids,
yeah,
use Elamite with increasing regularity. Likewise, Elamite language and culture grew in importance in Susania. Kiduids, 1500 through 1400 BC, are a group of 5 rulers of uncertain affiliation. They are identified by their use of the older title, king of Susa, and king of Anshan.
So the king of Susa and the king of Ashan, these were locations, Elamite kingdoms, Elamite capitals. Read.
And by calling themselves servant of Kerwashir, an Elamite deity, thereby introducing the pantheon of the highlands to Susanna. The city of Susa,
You see, the city of Susa, read,
itself is one of the oldest in the world, dating back to around 4200 BC. Since its founding, Susa was known as a central power location for the Elamites and later Persian dynasty.
You see, Susa, the kingdom of Susa, was the capital of the Elamite nation. It was the capital of the Elamite kingdom. And later on, you're going to find out the Persians ruled over Susa. Now, let's go to the Bible. Daniel chapter 8, verse 2. So that was their main capital. The kingdom of Susa, or the city of Susa, was the Elamite capital. Daniel chapter 8, verse 2.
Daniel chapter 8, verse 2. And I saw in a vision, and it came to pass, when I saw that I was at Shushan in the palace, which is in the province of Elam. And I saw in a vision, and I was by the river of Ulai.
So Daniel says the palace. He was in a palace which is in a province of Elam. Now the funny thing is, during Daniel's time period, you don't really hear Elam spoken too much of. You hear Persia or the Medians, the Persian and Medes. So the Bible alternates between the fathers or the different names because of the reclassification throughout the time process in history. So originally it was called the Palace of Shushan or Susa, which was the Elamite capital, the capital of Elam. Now let's go Esther chapter 1 verse 1. So Esther was during the Persian and Mede captivity. But now they weren't really called Elam. They were called something else. Esther 1 verse 1.
Esther chapter 1 verse 1. Now it came to pass in the days of Azorus. This is Azorus which reigned from India even unto Ethiopia.
So Azorus reigned from India even to Ethiopia. He reigned in the Indus Valley region, or Indus Valley civilization. So he reigned from Azorus, which was Xerxes, which you're going to find out. If you see the movie 300, I believe it was the second movie. 300, the second movie. That's who it was. Xerxes, which was Esther's husband. He ruled in the Indus Valley region. From India to Ethiopia. Read.
Over 127 provinces. That in those days, when the king Azorus sat on the throne of his kingdom, which was in Shushan the palace. He
sat in his throne in the kingdom, which was in what?
Which was in Shushan the palace.
Which was in Shushan the palace. Shushan was the capital of the Elamite kingdom. But now, Esther being a Persian kingdom, because of the name changes, the alterations, reclassifications of the fathers in Genesis, now the Elamites are called the Persians. The same people ruling over the same provinces. So Ahasuerus or Xerxes ruled over Susa, the kingdom of Elam. Same people. All right? Now, let's go to the people of Persia in contemporary terminology. Wikipedia. Persians. All right? So you have two people ruling in the same city. Read. Now go back down. Thank you.
In contemporary terminology, people of Persian heritage native specifically to present-day Afghanistan, Tajikistan.
I think so. So it says, in contemporary terminology, people of Persian heritage. People of Persian heritage. Native specifically to present-day Afghanistan, Tajikistan, read. Uzbekistan, read.
Are referred to Tajiks.
As Tajiks. Read.
Whereas those in the Caucasus, primary in the present-day Republic of Azerbaijan, and the Russia federal subject of Dagestan, albeit heavily assimilated, are referred to Tats. However, historically, the terms of Tajik and Tat were used as synonymous and interchangeable with Persian.
So, what I want to touch base with is we read earlier, Elam within the Indus region valley consists of Pakistan, Afghanistan. Now, under the Persians, it says people of Persian heritage, natives specifically to present day Afghanistan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan. So that's all within the same Indus region valley. So showing that these are the same people that comprise of these people. So today we call the Afghanistanians, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan. But they're all descendants of the same people. Descendants of Elamites. They're not Arabs. That's right. They're all Elamites. Even though they have different classifications of their nationalities, they're just like today. The same thing that they did to us. The same thing that was done to them. I'm going to show you who's the one that reclassified their names. Just like they call us blacks, Hispanics, Native Americans, whether African American, whether it's Dominican, whether it's Puerto Rican. They re-identify us. To what? To disprove the Bible, the truth of the Bible. The Bible documents all races, all nationalities, all ethnicities. All right? And it proves that this is a true book. That's why they changed the identity of everybody. So that when you see the Bible, you say, oh, that's a religious book. That book is not real. No, the Bible is the only factual, correct, world historical book. It's not only a book of history, but a book of prophecy and a book of our present as well. All right? Now, let's go to Parsis, or Parsis, which means Persian. Read. In the Persian language,
are an ethno-religious group who migrated to the Indian subcontinent from Persia.
So it says an ethno-religious group who migrated to the Indian subcontinent, migrated to India. Read.
From Persia.
From Persia. Read.
During the Muslim conquest of Persia of CE 636.
So that's all I wanted. Okay, go. No, keep going. Yeah, keep going.
Of 636 through 651 CE. One of two such groups, the other being Iranians.
So one or two such groups, the other being Iranians. So they're saying that not only the Persians migrated to the Indian subcontinent, but the Iranians as well. Read on.
Sub-Azorianism is the ethnic religion of the Parsi people. According to the
Zanjan,
Parsis migrated from the Sasanian Empire to
Gujarat. Oh gosh, Philadelphia education. So can you pull up a map of Gujarat? Where's Gujarat? So it says the Parsis, or the Persian people, as well as the Iranians group, migrated to the Indian subcontinent. They migrated to Susana, to what? Gujarat. Where's Gujarat located? Where is Gujarat located? And who was the Persians descended from, as we read in Josephus earlier? The Elamites. Elamites. They what? Migrated to the Indian subcontinent. Where's Gujarat located? All right. So this is India, Gujarat. We couldn't find a good map, but this is the best we can show you. So Gujarat is in India. So the Persians migrated to the Indian subcontinent, as well as the Iranians migrated to the Indian subcontinent. But guess who they were descendants of? Elam, the Elamites, the Persians, or Parsis. The same people. It's classified under different names. All right? Now, can we go back?
Parsis migrated from Sasanian Empire to Gujarat, where they were given refuge between the 8th and 10th century CE to avoid persecution following the Muslim conquest of Persia. At the time of the Muslim conquest of Persia, the dominant religion of the region, which was ruled by Sasanian Empire, was
Zoroastrianism. I don't know.
Iranians such as Babak.
It's not our language, so just keep reading.
Rebelled against Muslim conquerors for almost 200 years. During this time, many Iranians who were now called Parsis.
During this time, many Iranians who are now called what?
Parsis.
Who are now called Parsis. So the Iranians were called Parsis or Persians. Read.
Since the migration to India.
Since the migration to what?
since the migration to India,
read.
chose to preserve their religious identity by fleeing from Persia to India.
By fleeing from Persia to India. Keep going.
The word pronounced Parsi is the Persian language. Literally means Persian. Note that Farsi is Arabization of the word Parsi, which is used as an endonym of Persian. And the Persian language is spoken in Iran.
The Persian language is spoken in Iran, read.
Afghanistan,
read.
Tajikistan.
It's the same people. So the Iranians, the Afghanistanians, or the Tajikistans, read, are the same people. They're all ancient Persians, or the ancient Elamites, read.
And some of other regions of the former Persian Empire. The long presence of the Parsis in India distinguishes them from the smaller Zagora.
That's what I want. So that's what we wanted. All right. So now, I want you to go to now the Medes and the Persians coalitions. Showing that all those people, what it be Pakistan, Afghanistan, Tajikistan, all those places, all those stands in the Indian subcontinent or the Indus region valley, those are all descendants of the Persians, the ancient Persians, all dating back to the Elamites, the forefather Elam, which descended from Shem, or the Semites. So some people think that in the Middle East that what? They're all Arabs. Not everybody's Arabs, because what? They somewhat look alike. So you have Ahmadinejad. People thought he was Arabs. No, he's an Elamite, or he's a descendant of the Persians. Same people. All right. Now read that.
Persians and Medes. Expressions like king of the Persian kingdom and the Median kingdom are a bit misleading. The Medes and the Persians were coalitions of Iranian nomad tribes.
So the Medes and the Persians were coalitions of Iranian nomadic tribes. So now, the Persian and Medes, what you're going to see, are two different ethnic groups. They come from two different forefathers. But now, even though they come from two different forefathers, there's a coalition between the Persians and the Iranians, meaning they're the same ethnic group, but they're not the same people. Iranian was a name that was given to them. So they mixed amongst. They were called, even though the Persian and Mede was a dual empire, they were joined together and they lived in the same region. So what happened? They called them all Iranians, but there's still a separation between the two. So it's a joint coalition. Read.
In the 5th century, this was still remembered, and the Greek researcher Herodias of Halicarnassus.
All right, that's all I wanted that. So the Persian and the Medes, they say they were both Iranians, but they weren't Iranians. Iran was a landmass that was given the name to those people living within that region. Iran. All right, now let's go to Genesis chapter 10, verse 2. Genesis chapter 10, verse 2.
Genesis chapter 10, verse 2. And the sons of Japheth, Gomer, and Magog, and Madai.
And who?
And Madai.
And Madai, the sons of Japheth, Gomer, and Magog, and Madai. Read.
And Javan, and Tubal, and Meshesh, and Tyrus.
All right, let's go to Josephus, book 1.6.1.
Now as to Javan and Madai, the sons of Japheth. From Madai came the Madines, who are called Medes by the Greeks.
You see? Now as to Javan and Madai, the sons of Japheth, from Madai came the Madians, who are called Medes by the Greeks. The Greeks always change the names of the original inhabitants or the original fathers. So they call them Madians, they call them Medes by the Greeks. All right, let's go to Compact Bible Dictionary, page 335.
Madai, Media, a people descended from Japheth.
So Madai, Media, a people descended from Japheth. Read.
Genesis 10, verse 2, 1 Chronicles 1, verse 5. They occupied the same area which modern Iran does today, and are called the Medes.
Read that part again. It said they occupy the same area which modern Iran does today, They occupied the same area which modern Iran does today, and were called the Medes. So the Persians and the Medes were a joint coalition which inhabit the region of Iran also. So they're a dual empire. So you can't really tell which one are the Persian and which one are the Medes, because why? They were mixed in together. It was a dual empire. All right, now that we identify who are the Elamites, the descendant or from the beginning, Elam. From Elam, the forefather descended from Shem. From Shem had Elam. From Elam came the Persians. From the Persians are Parsis, or Parsi. Or you have the Iranians, you have the Tibetistans, you have the Pakistanians, you have the Tajikistans. What else we have? The Afghanistan. What do you have? What else we have? I think Baghdad might be in that also. I think. Oh, that might be Israel, maybe. What else do we read? Tajikistan and some whatever can stand. So all that region Uzbekistan. So all those people are originally descendants from the Persians, or some of them are descendants from the Medes. But originally, so you have the vast majority of them that live within the Indus region valley are descendants from Elam. They're Elamites today. All right, now, let's go forward. The biblical forefathers of the Persians. All right, I want you guys to write this down. Daniel not only lived during the Babylonian captivity, but he also transferred over to the Persian captivity. So Daniel prophesied also in the Persian captivity. Around 538 BC. You also have Ezra prophesied, one of our forefathers within the Persian captivity. You have Zerubbabel and Joshua during the time period of Cyrus, Cambyses also. You have Esther around 486 BC. During the time of Xerxes, Ahasuerus. You have Nehemiah, which is approximately around 444 BC. All right, the prophets that prophesied during the Persian captivity and Medo captivity. Daniel, not only a father, but was a prophet that prophesied during his captivity. You had Ezra, also was a prophet. Haggai prophesied during the Persian captivity. Zechariah prophesied, as well as Malachi prophesied during Persian and Medo captivity. Let's go to Daniel chapter 8, verse 3. Daniel chapter 8, verse 3.
Daniel chapter 8, verse 3. Then I lifted up mine eyes, and saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram, which had 2 horns. And the 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other.
So it says, Daniel saw a vision. He says, then I lifted up my eyes and saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram which had 2 horns. So the images and the depiction Daniel seeing is allegorically speaking of referencing nations. So the Most High will use images or imagery to represent kingdoms, ruler empires and kingdoms. So the ram had 2 horns. Read.
Before the river a ram which had 2 horns, and the 2 horns were high.
So the Most High will use different animals to reference the different rules or the characteristics of the empire. So just like a ram having 2 horns, if you look at the characteristics of a ram, if you watch the videos, ram is a powerful creature. Even though, like I said, it's not as big, it's not as ferocious as a lion or as big as an elephant. If you see videos of ram, they always attack with what? The head down, and it push forward. So the ram representing a kingdom to the Persian and Medo captivity, or the Persian and Medo kingdoms, empires. And it had 2 horns. So ram, being a powerful and fearless animal, had 2 horns representing both kingdoms. Read.
But one was higher than the other.
But one kingdom was higher than the other kingdom. Read.
And the higher came up last.
And the higher kingdom came up last in a rulership. So it was a dual empire. What you're going to realize that, I'm just going to just veer off a little bit. Just like America. America takes on all the characteristics of the previous ruling empires. Just like America within a democracy. When we read Revelation chapter 13, it talks about the bear leaned on one side. So just like America has its Democrat as well as Republican Party. Represents the same thing. So during the Persian and Medo captivity, you had two political parties or two ruling empires that had two philosophies and ideologies, but they both came together. Now let's jump to read verse 4. Where do we lastly? Okay, yes, read verse 4 now.
Verse 4. I saw the ram pushing westward and northward and southward.
So the ram pushed westward, northward, and southward. They conquer all that region. Read.
So that no beast might stand before him.
That no beast might stand before him. Give me Ecclesiastes 3 verse 18.
Ecclesiastes chapter 3 verse 18. I saw in mine heart concerning the estate of the sons of men, that God might manifest them, and that they might see that they themselves are beasts.
That God might manifest that what? They may see themselves that they are beasts. That they are beasts. So men are referenced as beasts. Now go back.
Daniel chapter 8 verse 4. I saw the ram pushing westward and northward and southward, so that no beast might stand before him.
That no kingdom, no empire, no rulership may stand before the ram. Read.
Neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand. But he did according to his will and became great.
And he did according to his will and became great. And that's why you have Cyrus the Great, they call him. They call him Cyrus the Great. He became great. And that's where he got this name from. It's all prophetic. They don't call these people these names by coincidence. No, it was already prophesied that they will become great. Now, let's go to Daniel 8, verse 15. Jump to verse 15.
Daniel chapter...
We're going to read to verse 20.
Yes, sir. Daniel chapter 8, verse 15. And it came to pass, when I, even I, Daniel, had seen the vision and sought for the meaning, then, behold, there stood before me as the appearance of a man. And I heard a man's voice between the banks of IUIC, which called and said, Gabriel, make this man to understand the vision. So he came near where I stood. And when he came, I was afraid, and fell upon my face. But he said unto me, Understand, O son of man, for at the time of the end shall be the vision. Now as he was speaking with me, I was in a deep sleep on my face toward the ground. But he touched me, and set me upright. And he said, Behold, I will make thee know what shall be in the last end of the indignation. For at the time appointed the end shall be. The ram which thou sawest having two horns are the kings of Media and Persia.
The rams which thou sawest having two horns are the kings of Media and Persia. So it's all allegorical. It was a depiction. God will use certain imagery or images, or he'll use animals to represent that different kingdoms. He'll use the characteristics of an animal to represent the characteristic of that kingdom. And the ram had which had two horns, represent the Persian and Medes, or the Medes and Persian Empire. All right, now let's go Bel and the Dragon. Let's get into Bel and the Dragon and Apocrypha. Go on.
Bel and the Dragon. And King Astyages was gathered to his fathers, and Cyrus of Persia received his kingdom.
So you have the Persian and Medo Empire. So a lot of times we say the Persian and Medes, but it was the Medes and the Persians. So you have King Astyages. Read that again.
And King Astyages was gathered to his father.
And King Astyages was gathered to his father. He died. Read.
And Cyrus of Persia received his kingdom.
And Cyrus of Persia received his kingdom. But in Daniel chapter 8, it says the Medes and the Persians. The Persians came up last and became great, meaning Cyrus the Great. But the Medes ruled first, then the Persians came up second last. So it says Astyages died. Then King Cyrus came up after him. All right, now let's go to the Medes and the Persian king before Cyrus. The Median kings prior to King Cyrus. So you have Median kings prior to King Cyrus' reign. You have Deioces, you have Phartes, Scythian rule. You have Xerxes and Astyages were the Median kings. All right. Now, can you go to Leviticus.org? Read Bell on the Dragon one more time.
Bell and the Dragon. And Astyages was gathered.
King Astyages.
And King Astyages was gathered to his father.
And King Astyages, the last Median king, was died. Read.
And Cyrus of Persia received his kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
And Daniel conversed with the king.
Mm-hmm.
And was honored above all his friends.
And was honored above all his friends. Now, let's go. Yeah, start from the top. The rise of Cyrus.
The rise of Cyrus. The second logos of Herodotus, Histories, deals with Cyrus' rise to power. Herodotus starts his story with a brief account of the origin of the Median Empire. The Medes in the northwest of modern Iran were the first to shake off the yoke of Assyrians, who used to rule all Asia. Herodotus mentions several Median kings and states that King Xerxes captured Nineveh and subdued the Assyrians, all except the territory belonging to Babylonia. Xerxes' son Astyages.
Xerxes.
Xerxes' son Astyages is the next king of the Medes.
Xerxes' son Astyages
is the next king of the Medes.
So Xerxes' son Astyages is the next king of the Medes. Read.
And his daughter Mandane is married to a Persian named Cambyses.
And his daughter Mandane married into a Persian named Cambyses. What you're going to see is you're going to see even to today. One of the custom was, in order to gain rulership or power, you always marry into another power's family. And they joined powers collectively. So usually that was done by marriage. So it says, Xerxes' son Astyages is the next king of the Medes. And his daughter Mandane is married to a Persian named Cambyses. Read.
A man he knew to be of good family and quiet habits. The Persians were subject to the Medes. A child is born, Cyrus.
A child is born, Cyrus. Who was Cyrus' father? Cambyses. Cyrus was the son of Cambyses, a Persian, and he was a son of Cambyses, and his mother was Mandane, which was a Mede. Read.
After some nightmares that predict the baby's future as Lord of all Asia.
So he had a nightmare. So Astyages had a nightmare that Cyrus will be ruler of what?
Baby's future as Lord of all Asia.
So Astyages had a dream that his grandson will rule all of Asia. Read.
Astyages decided to kill the child.
So he says, you know what? Being wicked as he is, he said, you know what? Just from a dream. He said, whoa. Because of power, the lust of power. He said, I can't have my baby grandson rule over all of Asia. So seeing it afar off, he said, let me kill him. Read.
Herodotus tells the fairy tales-like story of Cyrus' miraculous escape from danger. The boy grows up to become the bravest and most popular young man in Persia. Then he receives a letter from a Median courtier named Harpagus, who has a grudge against Astyages and wanted to remove him. When Cyrus revolts, Astyages foolishly makes Harpagus the commander of an army against the rebels. Of course, the Median army defects to the Persians, and Astartes is imprisoned. From now on, Cyrus is the king of both Persian and the large Median empire. As we have seen in the first Logos, he added Lydia a few years later.
So it showed that Cyrus, once he gained power and rulership, he locked Astyages up. And Astyages later died. And that's the missing link in history and Bel and the history of Bel and the dragon. So when it says, and King Astyages was gathered to his fathers, and Cyrus of Persia received his kingdom. So Astyages, so as Cyrus gained power and position in the army, he had Astyages later on locked up, and Astyages. Now, the funny thing is, Astyages, when Cyrus was just a baby, had a dream, had nightmares that he would rule all of Asia. The Most High showed him the future of his grandson and him taking over both kingdoms and ruling over that whole region. Cyrus the Great. Now, let's go to Isaiah 44 verse 28. And not only did Astyages show that it's not only visual in Astyages' dream, but also it's prophetic. Hundreds of years, 100 years prior to Cyrus ruling, it was already prophesied. It was already ordained for Cyrus to rule. All right. Isaiah 44 verse 28.
Isaiah chapter 44 verse 28. That saith of Cyrus, he is my shepherd, and shall perform all my pleasure.
Wait, now, Isaiah, what captivity was he around? He was around the Assyrian captivity. So it says, read that again.
That saith of Cyrus, he is my shepherd, and shall perform all my pleasure.
So it says, thus that saith of Cyrus, he is my shepherd. But Cyrus wasn't even born. Yo, that's showing that 100 years prior to the birth of Cyrus, before the Persian enemies was even mentioned, before the Persians came in rulership, Cyrus was already ordained to be a shepherd of God, showing that the Bible is a true book. Scholars cannot even refute this. You cannot refute the information of Isaiah, which during the Syrian captivity, prophesying King Cyrus during the Persian captivity around 538 BC. No, you cannot do that. No person, no human can predict this, but a God. Read that again.
That saith of Cyrus, he is my shepherd, and shall perform all my pleasure.
He says, Cyrus is my shepherd, and he shall perform all of my pleasure. Read.
Even saying to Jerusalem, thou shalt be built. To the temple, that thy foundation shall be laid.
So it says, thou shalt be built. So it says, even saying to Jerusalem, thou shalt be built. So before Jerusalem was cast down, before Jerusalem was destroyed in Assyrian captivity. Remember, Jerusalem was destroyed what captivity? That Babylonian captivity. When the temple was destroyed, was burnt with fire by the Babylonians and Esau, the Edomites. He says Cyrus was ordained, was prophesied to build the temple again. Even saying to Jerusalem, thou shalt be built. And to the temple, thy foundation shall be laid. Before it even happened, Isaiah was prophesying. Isaiah lived during the time period of 783 AD to about 715 BC, excuse me. So Isaiah lived around 783, approximately 783 to 715 BC, which is over 100 years before Cyrus' birth, around 601 BC. So Cyrus' birth was approximately around 601 BC. So over 100 years, Isaiah prophesied about the existence of Cyrus being used as a shepherd of God, also being used to rebuild the temple at Jerusalem. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 45 verse 1 now.
Isaiah chapter 45 verse 1. Thus saith the Lord to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand I have holden, to subdue nations before him.
Wait a minute. Thus saith the Lord to his anointed. So the Most High used other nations. So people say, well, God God only deals with Israel. Yes, God only deals with Israel, but he will use kings to establish his will. He manipulates kings, and guess what? They have no question. Get that real quick in Proverbs 21. They have no say-so. So the Most High uses them to establish his agenda. But they're not his chosen. He was anointed in terms of being ordained. Being ordained to carry out his will. And his will was to what? To rebuild Jerusalem. So God always used the other nations, to use different kings. He will use them to establish his will. Just like he used Esau to destroy them. Read that.
Proverbs chapter 21, verse 1. The king's heart is in the hand of the Lord.
So the king's heart is in the hands of the Lord. The Most High controls the minds of the kings. Read.
As the river of waters, he turneth it whithersoever he will.
So as the rivers of water, just like the rivers of water turns different ways. Goes to the left, sometimes goes to the right. The Most High alters and turns the mindset. He manipulates them. He controls them to do his will, to establish his will on the earth. Now go back to Isaiah chapter 45, verse 1.
Isaiah chapter 45, verse 1. Thus saith the Lord to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand I have holden, to subdue nations before him.
That's why it says the ram with the two horns shall push forward the south, northward, westward, and southward to subdue nations, and no beast could stand before him. No man, no nation, no kingdom stood before Cyrus. Read.
And I will loose the loins of kings to open before him the two-leaved gates, and the gates shall not be shut.
Now, go to Jeremiah 25, verse 12. So this is during over 100 years of history prior to the existence of King Cyrus. Now, let's fast forward in history. Let's go to the Babylonian captivity. Jeremiah 25, verse 12.
Jeremiah chapter 25, verse 12. And it shall come to pass, when 70 years are accomplished, that I will punish the king of Babylon and that nation, saith the Lord, for their iniquity, and the land of the Chaldeans will make it perpetual desolation.
Read that again.
And it shall come to pass, when 70 years are accomplished.
When 70 years of Israel's captivity in Babylon are fulfilled. Read.
That I will punish the king of Babylon.
He will punish the king of Babylon. Read.
And that nation, saith the Lord.
Who did he use to punish the king of Babylon? Jeremiah prophesied of Cyrus. He used King Cyrus to punish the king of Babylon. Read.
For their iniquity, and the land of Chaldean, and will make it perpetual desolation.
So now, I want to go to Josephus now. Show you that our fathers always had the records of King Cyrus ruling. And why do you think? Let me ask you a question. Why do you think Cyrus gave the Israelites liberty? You think he says, you know what? I'm just going to give the Israelites liberty to just build a temple out of nowhere. No, I'm going to show you how Cyrus gave the Israelites liberty. What is it, Josephus what?
Book 11, chapter 1.
So Josephus, book 11, chapter 1.
Thus saith Cyrus the king, since God Almighty have appointed me to be king of the habitable earth.
Wait, thus saith Cyrus the king, since God Almighty have appointed me to be king of the habitable earth. So Cyrus understood that God appointed him to be king. The nations understood that. The only prideful and arrogant nation is Esau. Even though Esau knows that God set him up, you have Titus and Vespasian. Said it is only, I think, what is the quote? You do remember the quote? Titus and Vespasian? I think it was Titus. What does he say? He said something along the, he said, I know it's God. Said, I know it's God that allowed his temple to be destroyed. He understood, the nations understood the power of God back then. They understood that. The only prideful and arrogant stuck-up nation today that doesn't want to acknowledge God because of their pride and their hard heart is Esau. So King Cyrus acknowledged God set him up. Read.
Thus saith Cyrus the king, Since God Almighty have appointed me to be king of the habitable earth, I believe that he is that God which the nation of the Israelites worship.
Cyrus understood that. The nations back then understood that. He says, I believe that he is that God which the nation of the Israelites worship. He understood that he was the God of Israel and none else. But today, the white man, as demonic as they are, have taken the Bible, the concept of God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and it made it God of the universe. It made them the God of all people. For the deception of the whole world and us, to keep us subservient and docile. Read on.
For indeed he foretold my name by the prophet.
Wait, for indeed, Cyrus understood that he foretold his name by the prophets. Read.
And that I should build him a house at Jerusalem, in the country of Judea.
Cyrus knew what he was ordained to do. When Cyrus came in power, he says, I know why I'm in power. It was already prophesied and ordained that I shall build the house in Jerusalem. Read.
This was known to Cyrus by his reading the book which Isaiah left behind him of the prophecies.
So this was known to Cyrus by his reading the book. Cyrus had records of our book. All the nations. That's why every nation has records of our books, of our history. They understand their position, their place, as well as our place and our positions on this earth. So it says, this was known to Cyrus by his reading the book which Isaiah left behind him of his prophecies. Read.
For this prophet said that God had spoken thus to him in a secret vision.
So this prophet said that God has spoken thus to him in a secret vision. Read.
My will is that Cyrus, whom I have appointed to be king over many and great nations, send back my people to their land and build my temple.
God said, you're going to do my will. I made you king. And guess what? You're going to send back my people back to their land to build the temple. Read.
This was foretold by Isaiah 140 years before the temple was demolished.
This happened. Isaiah prophesied Cyrus 140 years before the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem by the Babylonians and Edomites. Read.
Accordingly, when Cyrus read this and admired the divine power.
Cyrus read this accordingly and admired the divine power. Read.
An earnest desire and ambition seized upon him to fulfill what was so written. He called for the most. So he called for the most eminent Jews that were in Babylon, and said to them that he gave them leave to go back to their own country and to rebuild their city Jerusalem and the temple of God.
And the temple of God. All right, let's go to Daniel chapter 5 verse 18. Keep taking this Bible as a joke. All right? Daniel chapter 5 verse 18. So, we last left off that King Astyages and Bel and the dragon. So, King Astyages was the last ruling Median king. All right? Prior to him, you have King Xerxes, which was his father. Then you have Astyages and Bel and the dragon. Daniel chapter 5 verse 18.
Daniel chapter 5 verse 18. O thou king, the most high God gave...
We're going to read all the way to verse 31.
Yes, sir. O thou king, the most high God gave Nebuchadnezzar thy father a kingdom, and majesty, and glory, and honor. For the majesty that he gave them, all people, nations, and languages trembled and feared before him, whom he slew, and whom he kept alive, and whom he set up.
Hey, can you read it again?
Yes, sir.
Properly.
And for the majesty that he gave him, all people and nations and languages trembled and feared before him, whom he slew, and whom he kept alive, and whom he set up.
And whom he set up. Read.
And whom he put down.
And whom he put down. Read.
But when his heart was lifted up, and his mind hardened in pride. He was deposed from his kingly throne, and they took his glory from him. And he was driven from the sons of men, and his heart was made like the beast, and his dwelling was with the wild asses. They fed him with grass like oxen, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven, till he knew that the Most High God ruled in the kingdom of men, and that he appointeth over it whomsoever he will.
See, just like Cyrus, he ruleth in the kingdom of men and appointeth over it whomsoever he will. Read.
And thou his son, O Belshazzar, hast not humbled thine heart, though thou knewest all this, but hast lifted up thyself against the Lord.
So Daniel was saying to Belshazzar, yo, you know this. You know God rules in the kingdom of men. You know the majesty. You know the power, the omnipotent power of God. But yet, you still refuse him. Yet, you still deny him in works. So, read that again.
And thou, his son Belshazzar,
O Belshazzar,
has not humbled thine heart. Though thou knewest all this, but hast lifted up thyself against the Lord of heaven. And they have brought the vessels of his house before thee. And thou, and thy lords, thy wives, and thy concubines have drunk wine in them. And thou hast praised the gods of silver, and gold, and brass, iron, wood, and stone, which see not, nor hear, nor know, and the God in whose hand thy breath is, and whose are all thy ways, hast thou not glorified. Then was the part of the hand sent from him, and this writing was written. And this is the writing that was written. Mene, Tekel, Opherzin. This is the interpretation of the thing. Mene, God have numbered thy kingdom.
This is like a movie. Daniel says, you're a rebellious spirit. And he wrote on the wall, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin. This is the interpretation of the thing. Mene, God has numbered thy kingdom. This is like a movie to me. God has numbered your kingdom. Read.
God has numbered thy kingdom and finished it.
And you're finished. You're done. Read.
Tekel, thou art weighed in the balances.
You're weighed in the balances. Read.
And art found wanting.
And you're found lacking. Read.
Pires, thy kingdom is divided.
Now your kingdom is going to be divided, destroyed. Read.
And given to the Medes and Persians.
And given to the Medes and Persians. Read.
Then commanded Belshazzar, and they clothed Daniel with scarlet, and put a chain of gold upon his neck, and made a proclamation concerning him, that he should be the third ruler in the kingdom.
And Daniel became the third ruler in the kingdom. Read.
And that night was Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, slain. And Darius the Median took the kingdom, being about 62 years old.
So Darius took the kingdom. Well, I thought, and Bel and the dragon, that Astyages was the last Median king. I thought Astyages was the last Median king. Why does it say Darius, a Mede, and it says, and Darius the Median took the kingdom? Why? Astyages was the last king, but Darius took the kingdom. He overthrew the Babylonians. But I thought Cyrus overthrew the Babylonians. Let's go to, where do I want to go to? Josephus. Book 10, chapter 11, verse 4. Verse 4, well, 4. Start verse, 4.
When Daniel had told the king that the writing upon the wall signified these events, Belteshazzar was in great sorrow and affliction, as was to be expected, when the interpretation was so heavy upon him. However, he did not refuse what he had promised Daniel, although he were become a foreteller of misfortunes to him, but bestowed it all upon him, as reasoning thus, that he was to
that what?
That what he was to reward was peculiar to himself and to faith, and did not belong to the prophets, but that it was the part of a good and just man to give what he had promised, although the events were of
A melancholy.
Hamelikani nature. Accordingly, the king determined so to do. Now after a little while, both himself and the city were taken by Cyrus.
And now after a little while, both himself and the city were taken by Cyrus. But in Daniel chapter 8, it says that Darius and the Medians took the kingdom, being 62 years old. But here it says, now after a little while, both himself and the city were taken by Cyrus, the king of Persia. Read.
Who fought against him. For it was Balthazar, under who Babylon was taken, and he had
What does it say? All right, I'll read it for you. Now it says, now after a little while, both himself and his city were taken by Cyrus, the king of Persia, who fought against him. For it was Balthazar, under whom Babylon was taken, when he had reigned 17 years. And this is the end of the posterity of King Nebuchadnezzar, as history informs us. But when Babylon was taken by Darius, but it says, wait, both by himself and the cities were taken by Cyrus. But it says, but when Babylon was taken by Darius, and when he, with his kinsman Cyrus, I'll say it again, and when he, with his kinsman Cyrus, had put an end to the dominion of the Babylonians, he was 62 years old. He was the son of Astyages, and had another name among the Greeks. Moreover, he took Daniel the prophet and carried with him into Media. So, King Astyages, Darius was the son of Astyages. So in Daniel chapter 5 verse 31, it says, and Darius the Median took the kingdom, being about 62 years old. So Darius was the son of Astyages. Darius ruled next to Cyrus. Guess what? If Darius was a son of Astyages, what was he to Cyrus? What do you call that? What do you call that? His nephew. Right? That's his nephew, right? That's his nephew. So Darius, so the connection between the two empires. You have Astyages had a daughter named Medane. Medane, he gave Medane to Cambyses. Cambyses had a son named Cyrus. Cyrus, also Astyages had a son named Darius. When Cyrus, remember, Astyages tried to overthrow and conquer, tried to overthrow and kill Cyrus. So the plot, because God already prophesied for Cyrus to rule. So Cyrus later on locked up Astyages, took control of the Median Empire. After he took control of the Median Empire, he worked aside Astyages' son, which is his, what do you call it, his cousin?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, no, not cousin.
No, nephew.
Nephew. What do you call nephew?
Nephew.
Whatever. So, he put Darius in position to overthrow Babylon. He sent Darius at 62 to overthrow Babylon. All right? Let's go to now Daniel chapter 6, verse 28. Yes, sorry, it's his uncle. Thank you. It's his uncle. So Darius was Cyrus' uncle.
The book of Daniel, chapter 6, verse 28. So this Daniel prospered in the reign of Darius, and in the reign of Cyrus the Persian.
So it says, so this Daniel prospered in the reign of Darius and in the reign of Cyrus the Persian. So that's where you have the dual empire. The Persian and Mede Empire. So the later empire, the later kingdom came up stronger than the Median Empire. So King Cyrus overthrew the Median Empire, or Astyages. It became stronger. And that's why he became what? Cyrus the Great. And they ruled beside each other, making it a dual empire. Let's go to now Ezra chapter 4 verse 6.
The book of Ezra, chapter 4, verse 6. And in the reign of Ahasuerus, in the beginning of his reign, wrote they unto him an accusation against the inhabitants.
So let me get it.
Yes, sir.
All right, read it again.
Book of Ezra, chapter 4, verse 6. And in the reign of Ahasuerus, in the beginning of his reign, wrote they unto him an accusation against the inhabitants of Judah and Jerusalem.
So now, Ezra chapter 4. Now get me, let's see, what do I want? History of Israel. Read that again. Now, so you had King Cyrus, and Darius ruled beside King Cyrus. After Darius or King Cyrus' reign or rulership, remember, it's the Persian now. The Medes already ruled. Now you have the Persians ruling right next to him. The Persians is in power. So after Cyrus, you had verse 6 again. Read that, verse 6.
And in the reign of Ahasuerus, in the beginning of his reign, wrote they unto him an accusation against the inhabitants of Judah and Jerusalem.
So, when you look at the rulership, after Cyrus, you have Cambyses. But now, let's go to history. Go down. All right, start with the neighbors of Jerusalem.
The neighbors of Jerusalem, accordingly, as soon as ever Cambyses ascended the throne, further contrived to excite his jealousy of the building of the temple and of every other sign of vigor displayed by the new settlement, which was still so weak.
Read.
Throughout the 8.5 years of the reign of this king, we have hardly any further information about Jerusalem. And this is not surprising in the long duration of these gloomy times. According to the
So it says, throughout the 8.5 years of the reign of this king, of Cambyses, we have hardly any further information about Jerusalem. Go on. And this is not surprising. Okay, go on.
According to the solitary historical work which had been preserved on this period, he was called Ahasuerus.
Ahasuerus. So Cambyses was also called Ahasuerus. Read.
In Greek, Xerxes.
And Greek, that's why you can't get it confused. All throughout the Persian captivity, is the Persian captivity and the Greek captivity is some of the most confusing captivities when it comes to the kings and rulers, because they're all called the same things. Just like you have the Ptolemies, you have the Antiochian and Antiochus. It's the family lines. They just call them the same names. So in the Bible, you have to know which ruler was this. They were called different names. You have the Xerxes, you have Ahasuerus, Ahasuerus. And you're going to see this multiple times. But you have to be able to go into the history and to be able to differentiate this person from the next person. I read that part again.
According to the solitary historical work which had been preserved on this period, he was called Ahasuerus. And Greek, Xerxes.
He was called Ahasuerus, and Greek, he was called Xerxes. Read.
In the Pseudo-Magian Smyrtis, Artashshata, Artaxerxes, on account of its proximity to Egypt, the country must certainly have suffered much during the Egyptian campaigns of Cambyses. Keep reading.
Let's see. So, keep going up. Keep going up. Keep slide up. All right. So, the point I want, in verse 6, it says, and in the reign, when you look up, read the letter where it says verse 7, number 7, next to Ahasuerus.
Number 7, Ahasuerus.
So, in verse 6, it says, in the reign of Ahasuerus. In number 7, it says Ahasuerus. Cambyses was called Ahasuerus. Also in the Greek, Xerxes. So this Ahasuerus, people might get it confused with this Ahasuerus and thinking that it's Ahasuerus during the time period of Esther. No, it's not. This Ahasuerus is also called Ahasuerus, also Xerxes, but it's Cambyses, the son of King Cyrus. But it's not called Cambyses in the Bible. All right? Now, let's go to Ezra chapter 4, verse 7 now. We're going to read all the way to 24.
You said Ezra or Esther?
Ezra chapter 4, verse 7.
Verse 7. And in the days of Artaxerxes wrote Bishlam, Mithridash, Tabiel, and the rest of their companions unto Artaxerxes, king of Persia. And the writing of the letter was written in the Syrian tongue.
Read it again. Read it again. Sorry.
Verse 7. And in the days of Artaxerxes wrote Bishlam, Mithridash, Tabiel, and the rest of his companions unto Artaxerxes, king of Persia.
Now, you have verse 6. Now, Cambyses ruled, I believe, Cambyses ruled 529 to 522 BC. So I want you to write that down. Cambyses ruled 529 to 522 BC. Now, verse 7 again.
Verse 7. In the days of Artaxerxes wrote Bishlam.
Now, it says, in the days of Artaxerxes wrote Bishlam. Different time period. Different person. Read.
Mithridates, Tabiel, and the rest of their companions unto Artaxerxes, king of Persia.
Mm-hmm.
And the writing of the letter was written in the Syrian tongue and interpreted in the Syrian tongue. Raham.
So now, check this out. This is where the confusion comes in. And verse 6 says, in the reign of Ahasuerus, in the beginning of his reign, wrote they unto him, and accusations against the inhabitants of Judah and Jerusalem. So you might think verse 6 and verse 7 is the same person in the same time period. No, it's not the same person. Not the same time period. So verse 6 is Cambyses. Verse 7, I'm going to get into that and who this person actually is. So it's kind of, it is kind of around the same time period. So I'm going to talk on that. Read verse 7 again.
Verse 7. And in the days of Artaxerxes wrote Bishlam, Mithridath, Tabiel, and the rest of their companions unto Artaxerxes, king of Persia. And the writing of the letter was written in the Syrian tongue and interpreted in the Syrian tongue.
Mm-hmm.
Raham, the chancellor, and Shimshai, the scribe, wrote a letter against Jerusalem to Artaxerxes, the king of this sort. Then wrote Raham, the chancellor, and Shimshai, the scribe, and the rest of their companions, the Dianites, and the Arpharathites, and the Tarpelites, and the Apharthites, and the Archivites, the Babylonians, and Sushanites, the Dehavites, and the Elamites, and the rest of the nations whom the great and noble Asnapper brought over, and set in the cities of Samaria, and the rest that are on this side the river, and at such a time. This is the copy of the letter that they sent unto him, even unto Artaxerxes the king. Thy servants, the men on this side the river, and at such a time, be it known unto the king, that the Jews which came up from thee to us are come unto Jerusalem, building the rebellious and the bad city, and have set up the walls thereof, and joined the foundations. Be it known now unto the king, that if this city be builded, that and the walls set up again, then will they not pay toll, tribute, and custom, and so thou shalt endamage the revenue of the kings. Now, because we have maintenance from the king's palace, and it was not meet for us to see the king's dishonor, therefore have we sent and certified the king, that search may be made in the book of the records of thy fathers. So shalt thou find in the book of the records, and know that this city is a rebellious city, and hurtful unto kings and provinces, and that they have moved sedition within the same of old time, for which cause was this city destroyed. We certify the king that, if this city be builded again, and the walls thereof set up by this means, thou shalt have no portion on this side the river. Then sent the king an answer unto Raham the chancellor, and to Shimshai the scribe, and to the rest of their companions that dwell in Samaria, and unto the rest beyond the river, peace, and at such a time. The letter which ye sent unto us have been plainly read before me, and I commanded, and search have been made. And it is found that this city of old time have made insurrection against kings, and that rebellion and sedition have been found therein. There have been mighty kings also over Jerusalem, which have ruled over all the countries beyond the river, and toll, tribute, and custom was paid unto them. Give ye now commandment to cause these men to cease, and that the city be not builded, until another commandment shall be given from me. Take heed now that ye fail not to do this. Why should damage grow to the hurt of the kings? Now when the copy of King Artaxerxes' letter was read before Raham and Shimshai the scribe and their companions, they went up in haste to Jerusalem unto the Jews, and made them to cease by force and power. Then ceased the work of the house of God which is at Jerusalem. So it ceased unto the 2nd year of the reign of Darius, king of Persia.
Then ceased the work of the house of God which is at Jerusalem. So it ceased unto the 2nd year of Darius, king of Persia. You might think this is Darius in verse 5. No, they all took the same names. That's what's the confusion, is the name. You have to understand the history behind it. Now verse 6 is Cambyses, which is also called Ahasuerus, or Ashvarash, or Xerxes. Now verse 7, you think it's Artaxerxes. Now get me the history, the dictionary of the Holy Bible.
A little bit.
Artaxerxes, Smyrnus, Mardas, Senaphidites. You see, you gotta do like that.
Oh, I got it. Orthopot Steve.
Oh gosh, Philly education again.
Ahasuerus, Cambyses, why he ravaged Egypt.
Ahasuerus, Cambyses. I'll say again. Ahasuerus. You see in verse 6 says, and in the reign of Ahasuerus, or Ahashtaroth, Cambyses. Cambyses is Ahasuerus in verse 6. Read.
While he ravaged Egypt, left Ptahizatha.
Oh Lord, we're black. Excuse us.
The Magus to govern the Persian state, hearing that Cambyses had murdered his only brother, Smerdis.
So Cambyses murdered his only brother, Smerdis. Read.
Ptahizathes, considering how much his own brother Smerdis resembled the murdered prince.
So it says, Ptahizathes, considering how much his own brother Smerdis resembled the murdered prince. I'll say it again. So it says Cambyses had murdered his only brother Smerdis. Cambyses, I'll say it again, murdered his only brother Smerdis. You have a man named Ptahizathes, consider how much his own brother Smerdis. So you have two Smerdises. I want you to keep in mind that. Read.
Resembled the murdered prince.
So Ptahizathes, brother Smerdis, resembled Cambyses, brother Smerdis. Read.
Set him on the throne in Cambyses' absence.
So, yeah, Ptahizathes set his brother Smerdis on the throne in the absence of Cambyses. So when Cambyses was away. Read.
And gave out that he was the real brother of the king.
You see this bait switch? Yo, wickedness. So, yeah, Ptahizathes took his brother Smerdis, which resembled Cambyses' brother. Now, meanwhile, Cambyses' brother was killed. But while Cambyses was away from his kingdom, yeah, Ptahizathes, whatever his name is, what is it? Ptahizathes put his brother in place of Cambyses' brother. Read.
Informed hereof, Cambyses marched homeward to dethrone him.
So Cambyses later found out that Ptahizathes placed Smerdis up as king. Cambyses found out and came back. Read.
But dying by the way, he begged his nobles to pull down Smerdis, who who he affirmed was not his brother.
He said, this is not my brother. He's an imposter. Read.
But a Magian imposter.
A Magian imposter. Read.
To clear the matter with certainty, Ostanes, a nobleman who knew that the ears of the Magus had been cut off by Cyrus or Cambyses, procured information by his own daughter, a concubine of Smyrna, that his ears were really a-wanting. He, Darius Hystaspes, Gobryas, and 4 other princes, after binding themselves by an oath to slay the Magus or perish in the attempt, rushed into the palace and killed him and his brother. During this imposter's short reign,
So during Smyrna's short reign, go,
of 5 months, Bishlam, Mithridash, Tabiel.
Stop. Says Bilsham, Mithridash, and Tabiel. I'll read again. Ezra chapter 4, verse 7. And in the days of Artaxerxes wrote Bishlam, Mithridash, and Tabiel, showing you that this Artaxerxes was Smyrna during the rulership and reign of Cambyses. So he ruled while Cambyses was away. You have Perticides set up Smyrna, his brother, that resembled his brother that was slain. Smyrna's Cambyses' brother that was slain. And during this time period, he was represented as Artaxerxes in verse 7. He was a Magian imposter. Read.
During this imposter's short reign of 5 months, Bishlam, Mithridash, Tabiel, Raham the chancellor, Shimshai, and their Samaritan tribes wrote him a letter, bearing that Jerusalem had been formerly a very powerful and rebellious city.
We just read that. Read.
And that if it was rebuilt, he might expect the Jews would quickly revolt and deprive him of all his tribute to the west of the Euphrates. His reply to this letter imported that upon inspection of the ancient histories, he found it to be as they had suggested, and ordered them to stop the Jews' rebuilding of either city or temple till they had further orders from him.
All right. That's all one. Now, show you that now. You have in verse 6, Ezra chapter 4, verse 6, that Ahasuerus is, or also known as Ahasuerus or Xerxes, is Cambyses, reigned about 529 to 522 BC. Then you have in verse 7, during that same time period, you have in the days of Artaxerxes. That Artaxerxes was Smyrna. Was the brother of Perticides. He reigned beside Cambyses as an impostor and Magian. So he posed as Cambyses' brother Smyrna. So that Artaxerxes is actuality is Smyrna. So verse 7 is Smyrna, in which the letter was written to. All right. So we're gonna leave off from there. Next week we're gonna pick up. So like I said, the series is gonna be pretty long. Make sure you have your pencil, your paper. Make sure you take in notes. Like I said, it's gonna be very detailed and informative. Lord's will, like I said, life lasts. We're gonna go from the Persian Medial captivity all the way to today, and the descendants, and then African diaspora in the Indian Ocean.
We used to scream black power while Heron was pushed. But at the end of the day, nothing's in vain. IUIC has been given a vision. The tents of Judah has risen. Many has attempted the mission, minor murmuring, omitting, and missing the mark. Just reading that he had the flame of fire in his eyes gave us the spark. We on Paul's mission. We out on the road, purple and gold, from Mexico, Cuba, Haiti, Ghana, Sierra Leone. 144,000 boots banging, concrete crackling. These are our men repented at heart. The scriptures is proof. IUIC, we deliver the truth.